I discovered the incredible truth in the ICU. A nurse's urgent warning changed everything. Ellen's heart raced as she scrolled through the patient charts under the harsh fluorescent lights of the ICU. Midnight shifts blurred into a relentless cycle, each moment spent caring for others while grappling with her own chaos at home. Her teenage son, Josh, constantly reminding her that time was slipping away. Here, within these sterile walls, her scrubs encapsulated her sacrifices, but beneath her steely exterior, anxiety clawed at her gut. Troubling patterns emerged in the data. Preventable deaths, inexplicable declines, echoes of neglect that pierced her resolve. The thought of confronting her superiors twisted her stomach in knots. "Not my place," she muttered, pressing her fists into her thighs. Yet the weight of systemic neglect felt like a noose tightening around her neck. For every life she saved, 10 more slipped through the cracks, and the truth gnawed at her like a dog with a bone. As she glanced at Mrs. Thompson, the elderly woman whose stories seeped warmth into the coldness of the ICU, Ellen felt that familiar tug of despair. "You can't just sit back when lives are at stake," Mrs. Thompson had said, her frail voice a haunting reminder of resilience. A life saved is a life worth living. Could Ellen risk it all to speak her truth? She shivered at the thought. If she stood up, would she lose the very job that sustained her? Josh needed her not just financially but emotionally. Doubts swirled in her mind like autumn leaves caught in a vicious wind. Each breath felt heavier as her thoughts spiraled. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The fear of failure threatened to suffocate her. Ellen could already hear the whispers of her colleagues who would question her loyalty if she stepped out of line, their silence like a shroud. Would they dismiss her as a troublemaker? Every step she considered felt like stepping off a cliff. Late-night reports piled up like bricks on her chest, each chart revealing not just data but lives lost, families shattered. The anxiety clawed at her sanity. She was losing control. The clock ticked steadily, mocking her anxious thoughts. Could she truly align her passion for care with the call for justice? She envisioned herself standing before the administration, voice trembling, heart racing. What if they retaliated? What if she faced consequences that would ripple through her life like a tidal wave? As the tension escalated, Ellen clenched her jaw, fighting the embers of despair igniting inside her. How far would she go to protect the vulnerable, to expose the dark underbelly of a broken system? Ellen found herself standing at an emotional precipice, her resolve battling her fears. Behind her lay the comfort of the known, her son, her life. Ahead loomed the terrifying unknown, daring to confront the very establishment that had taught her to care so deeply. The air crackled with potential, and as she stood on the edge of action, the cries of those she could no longer ignore ignited a wildfire within her. Everything hung in the balance. She felt the tremor of destiny at her fingertips. The true battle had just begun. Ellen's decision loomed like a shadow over her every thought, especially as the stress of the night gave way to dawn's early light. The hum of machines and the murmured conversations of her colleagues formed a cacophony around her. Yet their voices faded into the background. It was as if time had stilled just for her, allowing the weight of her impending choice to crystallize in her mind. She had spent countless hours perfectly navigating the intricate web of hospital politics, learning to communicate with patients, families, and colleagues with care. But now, faced with the unsettling truth about hospital neglect, those skills felt like hollow trophies. Skillfully she had once woven through challenges. Now she had to decide whether to use these same skills to confront the stark failures she witnessed. Ellen's pulse quickened as she asked herself if she could muster the courage to navigate this new challenge. Her mind flashed to Josh, his laughter echoing in their small apartment, a balm for her weary soul. A pang of guilt twisted her insides. What example was she setting for him by choosing silence over action? The image of his hopeful face filled her with resolve. Perhaps this was her chance to reshape not just her world, but his. Could she teach him, through her actions, the importance of standing up for what is right. The thought sent a surge of determination through her veins. Conversations around her began to sharpen, bringing her back to the duty at hand. With newfound clarity, she grabbed a patient report and began analyzing it in depth. Each statistic reverberated through her mind like a drumroll, intensifying her urgency. She was disciplined, detail-oriented, a skill honed through years of practice. But what if she applied these strengths strategically to build her case? Ellen refused to allow fear to dictate her narrative. She envisioned herself collecting evidence, compiling testimonies from colleagues who had encountered disturbing patterns, medication errors, indifferent care, the stories that echoed in grief long after the ward fell silent. She knew that if she prepared meticulously, she could approach management not as just a nurse, but as an ally of the administration, an ally who could bring forth change. As the shift continued, Ellen moved with intention. Conversations with her colleagues became more purposeful. They were the pieces of a puzzle waiting to be assembled. Could she trust them? Trust was vital, but so was the risk of trust betrayal. The potential resentment from those who feared losing their comfortable roles, if she exposed the lurking truths, weighed heavily on her mind. Yet it was her moral compass that bid her to press forward. The day wore on. Yet she felt an unshakable determination rise within her. Adrenaline surged as she made a tentative decision. Even if some chose to ignore the issues, others might rally behind her cause. The knowledge that she could be both a caregiver and an agent of change was an intoxicating thought. Perhaps her journey in the ICU had always been leading her to this defining moment. At the end of her shift, Ellen stood in front of the hospital's sliding doors, the late afternoon sun casting a golden hue upon her thoughts. With resolute clarity, she knew that she would confront administration the very next day, armed with evidence and testimony. The fear still licked at her heels, whispering warnings of consequences and doubts, but she silenced it with the vision of hope. But even as she walked towards home, Ellen sensed she was not merely heading back to her old life. Tomorrow was the start of a new chapter. The moment for profound change was close, yet it carried its own uncertainties. Would her boldness be met with support, or would she be met with resistance? As she approached her apartment, an uneasy fluttering in her stomach reminded her that the real test of her resolve was about to commence. Tomorrow would shape not just her path but the lives of countless others in the ICU. The balance was precarious, raising a question that loomed as she unlocked the door. Would she have the strength to follow through? Ellen awoke to the soft rays of sunlight filtering through the blinds, illuminating the room with a gentle warmth that contrasted sharply with the chill of anticipation still gripping her heart. Today was the day she had prepared for, yet her resolve felt fragile beneath the weight of self-doubt. The walls of her cozy apartment seemed to close in, whispering remnants of yesterday's uncertainty. Could she really take a stand against the very system she had dedicated her life to? As she moved through her morning routine, every action felt deliberate. From the way she poured her coffee to the careful choice of her attire. She selected a crisp, navy blouse, a choice she hoped would project professionalism and strength. Yet beneath her calm exterior, her mind raced, constructing countless scenarios of confrontation with hospital administration. The very thought sent her pulse racing, a steady reminder of what lay ahead. Ellen recalled the evidence she had meticulously gathered. Patient files, testimonies from frustrated colleagues, and a detailed chronology of overlooked red flags. Each component held power, yet the act of presenting it felt like standing before an oncoming storm. She could almost hear the voices of her peers, their cautious warnings echoing in her mind. Ellen, sometimes it's better to stay silent. You'll only get yourself in trouble. What if they were right? What if this path she envisioned was paved with more peril than progress? With a deep breath, she swiped a hand across her brow, dismissing these doubts. She couldn't lead her life weighed down by fear of retribution. Moments spent with Josh, teaching him lessons of bravery and integrity, coalesced to an unwavering certainty. This was not just about her. It was about healthcare itself, and ultimately about protecting the patients who had no voice. Arriving at the hospital, the familiar ambience enveloped her. Beeping machines and hurried steps painted a picture of a bustling environment. Yet within it, Ellen felt like an outsider bearing a weighty secret. The camaraderie that had previously comforted her seemed overshadowed by an impending sense of urgency. Each interaction with her colleagues began to take on new significance. Were they potential allies or unknowing obstacles? As she shared pleasantries with her fellow nurses, Ellen closely observed their reactions, searching for signs of solidarity. Would they acknowledge the truth she was so eager to bring to light, or would silence and complacency prevail? Her first patient of the day sat quietly, gazing through the window, unresponsive to her greetings. Ellen noted the stark contrast between her patient's passive demeanor and her own racing thoughts. Was this what neglect looked like in her ward? She willed herself to focus. Every minute she spent with this patient, every whisper of compassion, reinforced her conviction. When the clock finally signaled the moment she had anticipated, Ellen's heart thundered in her chest. Facing the administrative office felt like stepping into an arena of gladiators, each ready to defend their territory. With her papers clutched tightly in hand, she steeled herself. This was her moment to transform her fears into action. As she pushed open the door, the air shifted, and she felt a surge of adrenaline flood through her veins. Intimidation was quickly replaced by determination. This might be the crucible that forged a new direction for her career and her integrity. Ellen took a breath, preparing to set her case before the very people who could either silence her or amplify her voice. And just as she opened her mouth to speak, an unexpected figure strode into the room. An ominous presence that could send her carefully crafted plan off course. Would her resolve be strong enough to confront not only the system but also this new challenge? As Ellen stood there, heart pounding, caught between the looming authority of the administrative team and the alarming interruption of the unexpected figure, clarity began to rush in. It was Dr. Matthews, the chief administrator, his presence both an anchor and a storm surge. With deliberate strides he crossed the threshold, his brow furrowed in a mix of concern and curiosity. A chill ran down Ellen's spine as she recognized the potential weight of his influence. "Ellen, what brings you here today?" His tone was neutral but layered with unspoken implications. She felt the urge to retreat, to fold back into the shadows of compliance that had always assured her a place in the system. Yet she remembered the patient she had just attended, the silent plea for attention that echoed long after the room had fallen quiet. "I need to discuss some urgent matters regarding patient safety," she stammered, gripping the papers, her lifeline. Dr. Matthews raised an eyebrow. "Safety? In what context?" Those words ignited a spark of defiance within her. With every fiber of her being, Ellen sensed the stakes escalate, and for just a moment, she considered the consequences of not speaking up. The tension in the room was palpable, eyes glued to her, waiting for her response like a pack of wolves sizing up a stray. "Evidence has surfaced regarding frequent policy violations," she announced, her voice unsettled yet firm. "Patients are being overlooked, and the risks are mounting. I have documentation." His cold smile faltered slightly. "You really believe I want to hear about your internal grievances? You've dedicated years to this facility, and now you choose to burn bridges?" Ellen blinked, grappling with the hint of betrayal echoed in his words. She felt every muscle in her body coil, her determination surging as she faced that looming metaphorical storm. Addressing Dr. Matthews wasn't merely about relaying findings, it was a personal confrontation of her own insecurities, a challenge to her integrity. With a swipe of her hand, she laid out the papers before him, a visible timeline demanding attention. As each page crinkled under pressure, she felt the air thicken, laden with the weight of her convictions. "This is not just about me, Dr. Matthews. This is about our patients, the very reason we chose to serve in healthcare." His demeanor shifted slightly under the intensity of her display. "And if what you claim has no merit, what then, Ellen? You must know you are playing a dangerous game." Alarm bells rang in her head, the very possibility of retaliation intimidating and real. Yet in that moment, standing on the precipice of possibility, she realized that her commitment to her patients outweighed her fear of the consequences. "I understand the risks attached, but I refuse to ignore the truth. Denial is the surest path to failure, for us and for those we care for." Ellen found her voice gaining strength, her mental clarity sharpening. Dr. Matthews scrutinized her, assessing the gravity of her conviction. The air crackled with tension, a recognition of her growing resilience, a spark of defiance against the conformity she had long adhered to. "So what is your plan, Ellen?" His eyes narrowed, almost probing. Are you prepared for the fallout of your decisions? The question settled over her like a heavy mist. She could sense the line drawn between integrity and submission, and it solidified her purpose. It begins today. I'm not turning back. Just as she felt a surge of empowerment, the door slammed open behind Dr. Matthews, revealing another figure, Nancy, a once trusted ally now under the shadows of uncertainty. Her eyes flickered with a mix of concern and disbelief, and Ellen felt a knot of fear tighten in her chest. This was no longer just her battle. The landscape was shifting, and she now faced not only systemic opposition but the potential loss of relationships she had once thought unshakable. How would her next move shape not only her career, but the very fabric of their shared mission? Would Ellen have the courage to continue? Or was this growing conflict tearing apart her path altogether? Ellen's heart raced as she caught Nancy's eyes. It felt as if a fissure had opened between them, highlighting unspoken fears and unshed doubts. Ellen had always trusted Nancy, and the flicker of mistrust in her once comforting gaze was jarring. Yet she felt a swell of determination, a defiance that could no longer be contained. Ellen, are you really sure about this? Nancy's voice was low, almost a whisper, but the concern practically echoed off the walls. I can't stand by any longer, Ellen replied, her words carrying an urgency she hadn't expected to voice. This isn't just a policy issue. It's a chance to make a difference for the patients who need us. Right, but you know how the system works. They won't take kindly to someone poking around where they shouldn't. The skepticism in Nancy's tone was clear, but beneath it, a hint of something deeper quivered, perhaps fear for Ellen, or maybe a reflection of her own internal conflict. Ellen's chest tightened. She'd always believed in standing by her colleagues, but in this moment, it felt as if she was immersed in a battle fought primarily within herself. The weight of her convictions rested heavily upon her shoulders, but now doubt crawled into the corners of her mind. If Nancy feared the fallout, shouldn't she too? But recalling the faces of her patients, the desolate eyes gazing up at her in desperation, rallied her thoughts. What happens when we ignore these issues? If I don't speak up, who will? Ellen felt her resolve strengthening, driven by the urgency of the moment. Dr. Matthews stepped forward, a paternalistic presence attempting to bridge the growing divide. Ellen, your passion is commendable. But this is a large establishment with established protocols. Jumping into this without a strategy can lead to disastrous consequences. Then let us strategize, Ellen answered swiftly. Give me a chance to present my findings, to bring about real change. There it was, the call to action she had long suppressed, now fully unleashed. The mere act of speaking such words conjured a taste of a freedom she had never tasted before. Dr. Matthews frowned but seemed momentarily subdued, considering her challenge. Propose a meeting then. But I caution you, the risk isn't only to your position but to your colleagues' livelihoods. Are you prepared to potentially jeopardize others? Yes, Ellen declared, and the firmness of her voice surprised her. She braced herself for the fallout, aware of the fine line she was treading, intent on refusing to become a casualty of fear. Turning back to Nancy, she sensed potential fractures in their bond, as if trust was rooted in a fragile soil. And yet Ellen had to push forward. I can't do this alone. If I'm going to challenge the system, I need you by my side. We can hold each other accountable. Nancy hesitated, her brow furrowed. The silence stretched uncomfortably, an invisible wall forming around them both. Ellen, if you really believe in this, I'll support you. But be prepared, this road isn't just about confronting authority. It's about questioning everything we've ever known. Ellen absorbed those words like a wave crashing against rocks. Was she ready to re-examine the very foundation she had built her career upon? She nodded solemnly. I have to be. There's too much at stake. As the reality of their situation settled around them, an unexpected thrill coursed through Ellen. Each step now felt deliberate, a chain reaction igniting her purpose and unveiling new layers of her capability. But what would it take to not only challenge authority, but also foster an environment where her colleagues could unite against the looming obstacles? Would stepping out of line inspire courage or incite chaos? As the weight of their impending confrontation unfolded, a profound question laced the air. Could Ellen truly shape a future where patient care was a priority, Or would the system's oppressive structures suffocate her ambitions before they could even begin? Ellen spent the next few days immersed in research, her mind a flurry of information and possibility. Reports detailing patient outcomes, internal policies, and hidden flaws in the system filled her desk. Each page turned felt like peeling back layers of a complex tapestry, revealing hidden threads woven together by neglect and inefficiency. The urgency she now held was intoxicating but weighed heavily on her. The decision to challenge the status quo simmered at the back of her mind like an unresolved tension, feeding her resolve. Yet Nancy's words echoed, a constant reminder that her path would demand courage not just from her, but from those around her. Ellen understood the necessity of collective action, and she needed to empower her colleagues, planting seeds of doubt about the established norms while fostering a sense of shared mission. As Ellen prepared for the meeting with Dr. Matthews and the senior staff, she found herself wanting to craft her points with precision. Each piece of evidence needed to resonate not just as critique, but as a call to forge a better future. She envisioned herself standing firm, her voice steady, leading them to see that the risks were outweighed by the potential for transformation. On the morning of the presentation, Ellen dressed in an outfit that was both professional and assertive, a visual reminder of her commitment. The reflection in the mirror seemed unfamiliar, a woman transformed. The shy nurse she had been, prone to second-guess herself, felt like a distant memory. Instead, she stood on the precipice of possibility, her heart pounding with purpose. Arriving at the conference room, Ellen felt the weight of everyone's gaze as they filtered in, murmurs of unease sparking around her. She caught Nancy's eye, willing silent assurances that seemed inadequate amidst the tension. Ellen steeled herself, suppressing the impulse to retreat into the comfort of compliance. Dr. Matthews initiated the meeting and allowed her to begin. As she unveiled her findings, the air became thick with reactions: surprise, skepticism, and slowly, a begrudging acknowledgement of the truth she revealed. She articulated each point with passionate conviction, grounding her claims in data, while weaving in personal accounts that highlighted the very real human impact of systemic failures. But as she pressed forward, the vulnerability of this new role enveloped her. Confronting authority, especially those she respected, ignited a growing fear of rejection. Would they listen? Or was she merely an outlier stirring the dust of an unbreakable status quo? Ellen felt a stir of discomfort at the sight of some colleagues leaning back, crossing their arms defensively against her challenge. Anxiety ran through her like a current, urging her to retreat. A familiar voice broke through. "We can't ignore this any longer, or we'll lose what we stand for." It was Nancy, echoing Ellen's sentiments aloud. The solidarity in her words erupted within the room, a spark igniting murmurs of agreement among others who had been quietly discontent. Encouraged, Ellen pressed on, emphasizing collaboration instead of conflict. This was not merely about exposing shortcomings, but rather about shaping a system that prioritized care. By the time she finished, the room sat in a profound silence that felt like a heartbeat echoing in the aftermath of conflict. What came next? Would they risk change, or cling to the safety of the familiar? Ellen was poised for dissent, but also for accountability. It wasn't enough for her to speak up alone. She needed to navigate the path alongside her colleagues. As they began to deliberate, Ellen realized the fight was far from over. Conversations emerged, deliberations unfolded, and even as she glimpsed hope in newfound willingness to rethink, she understood the journey towards real change was just beginning. What had she truly set in motion? As Ellen awaited their responses, uncertainty clashed with pride. Would her courage pave the way for a revolution in how they viewed patient care? Or could confronting these powerful systems lead to her own downfall? The time had come for decisions that would shape the future, not just hers, but the lives of every caregiver and patient intertwined in the web of healthcare. The silence in the conference room thrummed in Ellen's ears, punctuated only by the subdued shifting of her colleagues. Their faces were a mosaic of contemplation, disbelief, and a flicker of something that resembled hope. Yet uncertainty gnawed at her. Had she gone too far? Was she merely a disruptor in a system that thrived on stability? She took a deep breath, willing herself to remain present as the realization washed over her. This moment could either validate her efforts or dismantle her resolve. Dr. Matthews cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention back to him. Ellen, thank you for your insights. They certainly offer a valuable perspective, he said, his tone careful, almost cautious. However, before we proceed with any decisions, we must consider the implications of these changes. We have protocols for a reason, and those must not be compromised. Ellen felt the weight of his words, the familiar tug of doubt creeping in. Protocols, those protective shields that shrouded complacency. How much longer could they rely on the status quo? The urge to argue the inherent dangers in stagnation bubbled beneath the surface. We must also remember that change, while necessary, can cause disturbances in our team dynamics. Another senior staff member interjected hesitantly, his arms still crossed defensively. Ellen's pulse quickened. They were locked in a dangerous dance of justifying inertia. But she had come too far to let her voice be drowned out now. But isn't that exactly what we're talking about? The system is struggling, and we are losing sight of our core purpose to provide the best care for our patients. If we don't confront these issues now, we risk much more than our routines. We risk the very integrity of our practice. A flicker of recognition sparked in Nancy's eyes, and Ellen seized the moment. Just imagine if we were able to streamline our processes while enhancing patient outcomes. What if we could reclaim the time for compassion, for the human touch that each patient deserves? The room stirred. Ellen could sense a movement, small but palpable, as others began to nod. It was a shift in energy, the kind that reminded her of the days when patients rallied behind a cause. This time, however, the cause was theirs to own. Yet doubts lingered. Would they be willing to fight for such a future? Or would they prioritize the comfort of familiarity? As discussions unfolded around the table, Ellen couldn't shake the fear of creating fractures within her team. What if her drive for comprehensive change cut deeper than she intended? This realization bore heavy in her mind. She had to navigate the delicate balance of advocating for change while fostering unity. Ellen's thoughts raced, formulating a strategy aimed not only at revealing the flaws, but at engaging her colleagues in crafting solutions. She began to envision small, tangible steps to allow the team to slowly transition toward a new way of thinking. What if we set up a task force to explore these issues further? Ellen proposed, her voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling inside her mind. We can collect feedback, analyze potential changes methodically, and present a pilot program to trial innovative solutions. Dr. Matthews raised an eyebrow. You believe a task force could yield meaningful insights? Ellen locked her gaze with his. Yes, and we can include voices from all levels of the staff. Engaging everyone will ensure that we develop solutions that are not only practical, but also foster a sense of ownership and commitment to those changes. The murmurs returned, this time infused with energy as her colleagues considered her suggestion. Discussions about logistics, potential impacts, and timelines began to spark collaborative brainstorming. With every idea shared, Ellen felt the camaraderie around the table strengthen. His statement, previously shrouded in skepticism, started to unravel. Ellen marveled at the shift taking place, but mixed with this triumph was a palpable tension. She glanced at her own reflection in the glass panel. Was she truly ready to lead them through this transformation? Was she prepared to shoulder the weight of their collective aspirations and fears? The responsibility grew heavier, but also more exhilarating. As the meeting drew to a close, Ellen's mind raced with anticipation. This was just the beginning, a spark igniting within her colleagues. But what challenges awaited as they ventured into uncharted territory? Had she merely laid the groundwork, or would she face the reckoning of pushing boundaries every step of the way? Ellen left the conference room with her heart pounding with a renewed sense of urgency. But deep inside, she could not ignore the echoing question: what costs would come with this new mission? Conversations would continue, but the real test of courage was yet to arrive. Ellen navigated the bustling corridors of the hospital, her mind racing with the weight of her responsibilities. The initial enthusiasm from the conference was overshadowed by a tapestry of doubts and unspoken challenges. Each step she took echoed with the balancing act. She now faced the collision of her vision for change and the steadfastness of routine that surrounded her. As she approached the ICU, Ellen's thoughts spiraled into a single focal point. How would she effectively rally her colleagues around the task force proposal? She needed to solidify a coalition of support, but how could she harness their fears into a force for innovation rather than resistance? The paralysis of indecision loomed, but she was determined to push forward and not allow her colleagues' inertia to quash her drive. A familiar face greeted her at the nurse's station: Lisa, a seasoned nurse with years of experience. The lines of her face told stories of both joy and exhaustion. Ellen approached, sensing an opportunity. "Lisa," she began, her voice imbued with earnestness, "I'd like to talk to you about the team meeting." Lisa raised an eyebrow, curiosity sparking for a moment before caution took root. "I heard there were some strong opinions shared. Are you sure this is the right time to rock the boat?" Ellen exhaled, feeling frustration simmer beneath her calm facade. "But if we don't challenge the way we do things, we're going to drown. You know as well as I do that we're burning out. Wouldn't it make sense to explore ways to work smarter?" Lisa considered her words while shifting the files stacked on the counter. "It sounds good, but people are scared of change. This is how we've always done it." Ellen squared her shoulders, driven by a need to break through the wall of resistance. "Scared? Sure. But scared doesn't mean we should accept mediocrity. What if I could demonstrate a few small wins? Show how this task force could lead to real improvements?" Lisa glanced around, lowering her voice. "You think you can change minds? These are people set in their ways. Look, Ellen, I appreciate your passion, but it takes time to shift perspectives." Orderlies moved past them, carrying supplies, and Ellen watched the hustle and bustle of the ICU with its stark reality, the relentless grind that she wanted to transform. "I know you're right," Ellen replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But is it okay for us to just stand by while patients suffer from mismanagement and a lack of personal connection? We owe them better." A flicker of understanding crossed Lisa's face, and for a moment, Ellen dared to hope. "What if I join you in the mission? We can approach the team together, advocate for brainstorming sessions. You have the experience, and I can infuse the energy." The words hung in the air, weighty and precarious, as Lisa evaluated the proposition. Ellen held her breath, acutely aware of time slipping away in their pursuit of change. What if we could create a couple of small victories early on to gain momentum? Wouldn't that speak volumes? With a pensive nod, Lisa finally replied, "We could try, but know this: if it fails, people will remember who was behind it." Ellen felt the pressure of that statement settle around her shoulders as she grappled with the gravity of her ambition. The realization struck her, igniting both fear and exhilaration. She had a choice: to forge through the internal sabotage of doubt or retreat to the safer shores of acceptance. She left the ICU invigorated yet apprehensive. The challenges ahead weren't solely professional. They beckoned her to confront her own fear of failure. Would the prospect of failure overshadow her commitment to make a meaningful difference? Later that evening, Ellen found herself engulfed in the dim light of her living room. Worn out but unable to escape the whirring of thoughts, she replayed the words exchanged with Lisa, an internal battle unraveling. With each passing moment, she yearned for more clarity, forcing herself to acknowledge a gnawing fear: what if her desire for change came with an exorbitant price? As the night deepened, horizons of uncertainty engulfed her ambition. Yet, amid her self-doubt, an ember of resilience simmered brightly. Tomorrow would bring fresh opportunities, meetings to galvanize support, and countless unknowns still waiting to unfold. Did she possess the courage to face the inevitable backlash? With a mix of resolve and apprehension churning within her, Ellen prepared for the day ahead, knowing that her journey forward might very well hinge on her ability to solicit support or ultimately stand alone. The clock was ticking, and the reckoning loomed closer than ever. What awaited her in the first meeting of the task force? Would she be ready to face the emerging discontent? Ellen awoke to the muted sounds of morning light filtering through her window, the weight of anticipation colliding with her thoughts. Today was the day she would present her proposal for the task force. As she stood before the mirror, she focused on grounding herself. Every self-doubt whispered against the excitement of her ambitions. Could she truly convince others to embrace the gains of innovation over the comfort of complacency? Arriving at the hospital, the familiar sights felt both warm and oppressive. Each face she passed reflected the shared strains of the medical environment. Elevators creaked to life, and the energy in the hallways pulsed with urgency. Ellen's heart raced, her mind swirling with how to frame her vision. She could falter or embrace the challenge ahead, her choice. A gathering of colleagues awaited her in the conference room, the atmosphere thick with apprehension. As she entered, she felt the collective eyes watching her, skeptical yet curious. Shoulders hunched, she steeled herself, recalling Lisa's cautious optimism that morning. Maybe small victories would open a path through the thick underbrush of fear. "Thank you all for being here," she began, delivering her words with an unexpected steadiness she internally marveled at. "I spearheaded this task force proposal because I believe we have a unique opportunity to change our current practices for the better." She outlined her vision, punctuating her points with examples of how other institutions had successfully implemented similar strategies that increased staff morale and patient satisfaction. With each reference she made, she aimed to weave a tapestry of potential that would spark intrigue. But she knew it wouldn't be easy. Acceptance, after all, often felt like surrendering to exhaustion. Change only works if everyone's on board. A voice cut through the discussion, a senior physician known for his staunch adherence to tradition. "You're talking about altering workflows and patient interactions. Do we even have evidence it'll benefit us?" Ellen felt the challenge ripple through the room. This was the moment to forge ahead. "I understand your concerns, but change is only scary when faced alone. I propose we take this step together and start with one simple initiative, a pilot program, focusing on communication between departments. If we can reduce delays through better interaction, we'll see tangible results that support broader changes." A sense of impatience in the room lingered, but she pressed on, her voice unwavering. "I'm asking for your partnership. If we can highlight at least one small success, we will create leverage around this task force." She could feel tension in the air as silence washed over the gathering. Ellen's mind raced, questioning her words, but the flicker in her colleagues' expressions hinted they were beginning to consider her perspective. As the meeting unfolded, she opened the floor to discussions and testimonials. Lisa spoke up, sharing her experiences and reinforcing Ellen's vision. The tide began to shift. A powerful realization took root in Ellen's core. However, the rising momentum was swiftly countered by another voice. "What about those who resist? The pushback this will incur may generate conflict rather than collaboration." It was a different colleague, echoing fears Ellen had not yet vocalized. "Conflict is part of growth," Ellen countered, feeling a surge of resolve. "If we don't confront these issues, we risk our integrity as healthcare providers and, more importantly, the well-being of our patients. Isn't that what we're here for?" As the dialogue continued, Ellen felt pieces of her plan crystallize. Each counterargument drove her thoughts deeper. Each defense refined the vision she had laid bare. Yet unsettling doubts remained, shadows of the backlash that could follow. This conflict exposed a darker truth. Was she willing to navigate the treacherous waters of dissent if it meant fostering change? As the meeting drew to a close, Ellen sensed a palpable shift. The energy had pivoted from confrontation to curiosity. Her colleagues engaged, questioning, willing to explore the boundaries of their steadfast limitations. Stepping out into the hallway, Ellen felt an unusual rush of adrenaline. The fervor of the conversation ignited something within her, the belief that she might just be up to this task after all. Yet lurking beneath the surface lay a cold reminder of the potential fallout that awaited her if she did not effectively rally their support. What would occur in the days ahead amid unfolding sentiments, a push toward collaboration or deeper resistance? And as the meeting left her invigorated, Ellen was sharply reminded of a secret fear. In striving for growth, she was exposing herself to the risk of their disdain if her ambitions failed to materialize. Would her commitment to transformation ultimately be the source of her undoing? The uncertainty loomed as she stepped into the ebb of her new reality, ready for the consequences yet to unfold. Ellen stood in the conference room, gripping the podium, her heart pounding with both anticipation and anxiety. The meeting had morphed into battleground discussions where the collective future of patient care hung in the balance. She could feel the tension solidifying in the air as voices rose and fell, her proposal for the task force flaring thoughts of resilience and defiance amongst her colleagues. Months ago, she had hidden behind her scrubs, shying away from the harsh truths that loomed in the shadows of the ICU. Yet here she was challenging the norms and demanding accountability. The journey of her transformation had begun with whispered doubts, but had grown into a powerful testament of courage, a realization that her voice held the potential to ignite the calling for change. Ellen, this sounds ambitious, but what if we disrupt the flow of our daily routines while we experiment? A voice interrupted her train of thought. Dr. Matthews, with a furrowed brow, trying to project skepticism, though Ellen recognized the glimmer of curiosity lingering behind it. No transformation comes without disruption, Ellen responded, her voice steady, visibly transforming under the supportive gazes. Embracing discomfort might lead us to rediscover our purpose in patient care. Aren't we all here for the same reason, to ensure our patients receive the best care possible? A ripple of agreement swept through the room, encouraging Ellen to forge ahead. Beyond the whispers of resistance lay an unmistakable alignment of shared intention. Ellen realized that she was not navigating this intimidating journey alone. Together, they could confront the heavy burden of complacency through collective initiative. As discussions progressed, Ellen began to see tentative nods and glimmers of acceptance among her peers, a stark contrast to the uncertainty that had pervaded the early moments of the meeting. It was reinforcement of the notion that they could indeed put patient safety at the forefront, prioritizing it over traditional complacency. Let us start with a pilot program, Ellen proposed, her stomach tingling with adrenaline. Let us implement strategic communication channels among departments and assess measurable improvements in patient outcomes. If we can demonstrate even minor wins, we can build a stronger case to continue expanding on these ideas. The room buzzed with fresh energy as others began chiming in on ideas and subsequent steps. What had once seemed an uphill battle morphed into ongoing collaboration. Ellen felt a sense of unity begin to take shape, something she had longed for throughout her career. This venture was no longer solely hers, it had transformed into a shared mission. After hours of discussions, the atmosphere began to settle, and decisions manifested as action items. They agreed on gathering patient feedback, enhancing interdepartmental relationships, and establishing a timeline to evaluate their success. Chris, one of the staunchest critics, finally broke down. You know, Ellen, if we can make this work, I think it could change how we view our practices altogether. Merely weeks ago, such collaboration felt impossible. The tumultuous journey they had collectively undertaken validated Ellen's determination. The need for transformation eclipsed the fear of collapse. As she left the conference room, jubilation surged within her, a tangible reward for her courage to confront systemic flaws. Later that evening, Ellen sank into her couch and replayed the day's events. The discussions had galvanized her colleagues, and she felt invigorated, solidifying her role not only as a caregiver, but as a changemaker. With every ounce of her being, she now appreciated the power of teamwork and how it could elevate their collective purpose in healthcare. However, alongside the exhilaration lay the looming question of whether they would collectively face opposition as the task force unfolded. She could sense potential pushback waiting in the wings. The road ahead would inevitably require navigating through discomfort yet again. But Ellen felt ready. She had evolved from anxiety-ridden nurse to a formidable force, committed to advocating for tangible change. As a mother, she craved to set an enduring example for Josh, to guide him with values that demonstrated that integrity and courage could conquer systemic flaws. With renewed determination, she meticulously outlined an actionable plan, blending her personal investments alongside professional aspirations. They would adopt an open feedback cycle among staff and patients, measure responses, focus on the nuances that could help them deliver better services, and weave their narratives into a robust case for reforms. As Ellen drifted into sleep that night, she held on to the dreams of tomorrow. Her journey was no longer about one woman standing against a broken system. It was about many emerging with unyielded voices, ready to reclaim the very essence of healthcare. This transformation, her transformation, was a stepping stone for countless others. The winds of change were formidable, but they swirled with promise as she finally found her footing in the complex dance of healthcare improvement. And as the new chapter unfolded, Ellen stepped into a destiny wrought with challenges and triumphs, forever committed to the patients whose lives embodied the very mission that had ignited this crucial transformation. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm seriously. It makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. This is the moment for true fans of personal overcoming stories.